Every day we face the challenges that every day throws at us. Now, I know that sounds ridiculous, but it really is true. Every day there's a new set of challenges that yesterday we didn't have. Every day we find ourselves facing obstacles that yesterday we didn't have. Every day we see that life comes at us, sometimes from a different direction than what it did just yesterday or just in the last 5 minutes. Every few minutes, there's a new set of obstacles. And the question is, what do we do with those new obstacles? It's really easy to find ourselves trapped in dealing with the obstacles. And you've probably seen the chart that talks about those things which are urgent but not important, those which are urgent and important, those which are neither urgent nor important. And you have to parse through those. You've probably seen the Pareto's principles that 20% of what you do produces 80% of the effectiveness, and 80% of what you do produces only 20% of effectiveness. It's the just getting through the daily life at the hurried pace, but it's not really productivity, right? You've heard people say things like, determine what your goals are for the day, write them all down, decide which one is the most important. Brian Tracy's book, Eat That Frog, was exactly that task. Look at all the things that have to be done in the next month, the next week, the next day, the next hour. Break all those tasks down into individual to-do lists. Then look at the one on the to-do list that is the absolute essential, that if you were going on vacation for a month or leaving town and not coming back, this has to be done. What is it? And then get that thing done right now. Get on it, stay on it, and don't quit until it's finished. And all of these motivational tips and hints are extremely powerful. And all of them, when applied, they work. The discipline to do them is what most of us struggle with. Because it seems really easy when these tyrannies of the urgent come rushing into our life and they drag us away to do what seems like it has to be done right now. There's no way around it. We can't put it off another 5 minutes. It's a crisis right now. And yet, once we've dealt with it, nothing else is resolved. No other problem has gone away. Everything else that we struggle against is still there. This one just took all of our time, and it took all of our attention for the moment, but it didn't really move the needle toward success. It didn't push us past the challenges that are going to continue to come. And that's the point where most people throw their hands up and say, I can't deal with this and this and this and this and this and this, and so I'm just going to go to work, or I'm just going to go to school, or I'm just going to take a nap, or I'm just going to eat a bucket of ice cream. And they let go of the pressure necessary to move the needle. It's easy to fall into that trap, if you will. Now, here's the scary thing about it. There's just a small difference between the 3% in this world who are successful and living the dream, if you will, and the 97% who are a slave to someone else's agenda, a slave to someone else's time, a slave to someone else's job, a slave to someone else's goals, a slave to someone else's success, a slave to someone else's achievements, a slave, you follow me? You may work in a job for someone else where your job pays you very well. And because your job pays you very well, you can live all of the accoutrements of life that you want to live. And if you're doing that, and it's your purpose, it's exactly what you were made to do. It just so happens that someone launched a company, built a company, started a program that you fit into so well that you are fulfilling all your life's dreams and financially successful and supporting all of the charitable contributions that you want to support. That's awesome. There are very few people who find that to be true. Many people struggle somewhere in the midst between. I'm terrified of the idea of being an entrepreneur and the ups and the downs of income and the curiosity of where next month's income is going to come from and what new customer will I get to pay the bills. But I don't really fit in somebody else's work environment. I have my own ideas. I have my own dreams. I feel called to accomplish something no one else is accomplishing right now. I feel like my contribution should be more to this life than just showing up at someone else's place of business, putting money in their pocket. And no, this is not all about money. How do we know? Well, because there are missionaries. There are people like Mother Teresa who have laid it all aside. They didn't feel like a job with an organization was exactly what they were called to do. They were called to do something different, something more, something else, somewhere else. And somewhere in that little valley between the two, between those who are successfully working for someone else and living the dream that they choose to live, and those who say, I can't really live my dream while working for someone else because I feel like I have to do something more than just work for someone else. There's like the gutter in the bowling lane. And that gutter is the struggle between how do I financially succeed and how do I succeed at my calling when they don't seem to be perfectly aligned with each other. I can tell you one of my frustrations with online gurus right now is that many of these online gurus, their first and foremost focus is making money. And they make money by telling you how they made money so that you can make money the same way that they made money. And what they're selling is a way to make money. They're not really selling a solution or a solving of a problem or a major change or transformation in anybody's life other than the pursuit of money. And I get that. And I understand that there are a lot of them out there who will actually convert people to the idea of making money the way they've made money, and they will make money. And so my question still is your calling simply to make more money? Because there are a lot of jobs out there, there are a lot of ways to do that, to just make money. But if your calling is something different than that, if your calling is to impact people, to transform lives, to bring change about for others, what does that change look like? And is the change that you will bring about in other people's lives important enough for you to stick with it, even when the money isn't immediately there? See, there's a myth that, and I've said it before, and I believe that in the long run it's absolutely true, but in the short run it's a test. There's a myth that says immediately when you start doing for other people what other people need, build a better mousetrap, give them a solution to their problem, that the money will follow. Yes, the money will follow, but it's not like a boat following a pickup truck to the lake. It's much more like the comet tail following the comet. That if you looked at it not at light speed, you would realize there's quite a distance of debris field behind it. The comet flying through outer space has a trail, it has a tail of things that have got caught up in its wake and parts of stone that have broken off of it, and etc. as it sweeps through space. That tail behind it, the comet's tail, is not even physically attached to the comet. It's just moving along with it because of the greatness of its momentum. See, there's a turning point and a testing point in the process of doing what you've been called to do. That your obedience to your calling demands that it be tested. There's a season where doing what you're supposed to be doing will not be easy. Just to be perfectly transparent with you, it's real tempting right now to just stop doing these videos every day and go get a job because Christmas is coming, and it'd be nice to have more money in the bank, and doing these videos doesn't pay me a dime. But they're cutting into the hours that I could be getting ready for work to go to a 9-to-5 job and make significantly more money. But that's not what I was told to do yet. So I'm doing what I was last told in obedience, knowing that I am not Jireh. He is. My job is to obey. His job is to provide. And I'll tell you, there are days during this gutter season, this testing season, this between the two season, where all the preparation has been done. There's plenty of content. There's plenty of teaching. There's plenty of training material. But nobody's buying it yet. That it's easy to ask the question, am I still doing what I'm supposed to be doing? But I can tell you that I got the same email or Facebook message yesterday from a 19 or 20-year-old who says, I know there are things in my life that I'm supposed to be doing, that I want to do, that I'm called to do. But the things that I have to do keep taking up all my time. I can't get past the things that I have to do what I want to do, that I know that I'm supposed to do. Well, if 19 and 20-year-olds are facing this, if grown men are facing this, if young women are facing this, I was watching a Hallmark movie just the other day, and the older lady was counseling the younger lady, and she was sitting on the swing out in the front of their little country home, and she said, I just don't understand why it has to be so tough. Why can't life be easier? And the old lady looked at her and she said, it has to be tough to keep out the riff-raff. I want you to think about that for a second. Because there is a huge part of the population who won't even ask the question, what do you really want in life? What are you really called for? Are you living out the purpose for which you were made, or are you just showing up, punching the clock, gathering your check, and going home, drinking the Kool-Aid, and watching TV? And if you are and you're content with that life, it's your life. You know what the word complacency is, though, right? According to Webster's dictionary, complacency is contentment to a fault. It's the place where you're pretty much lulled into sleep, where you've given up on a dream or given up on a hope, and you just feel like what I have now is good enough and I'm not going to pursue anymore. A lot of people think that that is the scriptural definition of spiritual maturity. I'm not sure I agree with that. There is a place where Scripture says we should be content and godly. That contentment with godliness is great gain. Paul said, I've had everything and I've had nothing, and I've learned in all things to be content. I don't think that means to simply be satisfied with whatever circumstances you're in. I think it means to be content in your relationship with God, regardless of what your circumstances on earth look like. But I also know that there were many people in Scripture who wanted to do more for God, who wanted to be obedient to God, who followed God to the edge of the envelope of the norm. Look at Elijah. Look at Elisha. Look at the prophets of old. Even the Christ. They did what seemed abnormal to everyone else. It was outside the world system at that time to behave, to obey, to do what God called them to do. It was an entirely different thing. And I believe there are still those who are called, who realize that the gutter is there, that there's going to be a place where all the momentum and all of the building and all of the preparing, all of the training, all of the network meetings, all of the associations that you belong to, all of the investment in your growth process seems to come to a screeching halt, and the tail is catching up with you, but the money isn't in it yet. And it's going to be really tempting to check out. It's been a couple of years ago, I ran into a guy who, together we had competed at an advanced level when I was making my run for the World Championship of Public Speaking. And we had seen each other in a couple of different competitions, and I remember the first time that I met him face to face, and I remember the last time that I saw him in competition. And he presented his speech and sat down, and then I presented my speech and sat down, and on my way back he just shook his head. Later he shook my hand and said, we didn't stand a chance against you. I remember seeing him at a mentoring program that I'm a part of, mentoring high school students, and he's one of the curriculum creators, and he's one of the leaders in that organization, and I truly appreciate what he's doing. But there was a season between those two that I was in a Starbucks meeting with somebody else, and he walked by the table with his Home Depot apron on, and he looked at me and he said, "You probably don't even remember me, do you? I probably don't even make a dent in your memory." I said, "No, I remember you." And I called him by name, and I told him where I had last seen him and asked him how things were going. And he lifted up his apron and he said, "Well, I haven't had the success that you've had, and I gave up and got a job." And the near tears in his voice when he said that, the sense of defeat, I have to be honest and tell you, that haunts me. It haunts me because daily, when I look at the financial strain that could be alleviated, if I just gave up the nonsense of the dream of doing what I love to do and doing what I feel like I'm called to do, equipped to do, prepared to do, made to do, purposed to do, and just went back to selling advertising, a lot of the financial strain would be gone, but the internal struggle would be even greater. The notion that I may have given up just before the breakthrough would eat me alive. The idea that someone that I was sent here to help didn't get help because I gave up on me before I could help them, that would tear me up inside. I'm glad to see that he's still involved in the mentoring, and I'm glad to see that he's still writing curriculum and that he's still leading others and still making an impact and still using his gift for speaking to touch the world. But that's a reminder to me to not cash it in when the chips are down, to not give up when it's not making all the money you can. Now, that doesn't mean I won't get a side job. It doesn't mean I won't do a side hustle. I still have the DJ business to be another stream of income. We still sell books and do public speaking and create curriculum, and we're building the online classes and all of those things. And I know through any one of those avenues, God can bring a financial miracle and change the entire landscape of our lives. But I also know, just like the old lady said in the Hallmark movie, sometimes the struggle is there just to keep out the riffraff. If success was easy, everyone would do it. If what my calling demands of me was simple, a whole lot more people would be doing it. I remember a comment by Michael Hyatt, and I believe it was in his interview with John Maxwell. It may have been a different place because I've watched a lot of interviews with John Maxwell. And Seth Godin has said a very similar thing. When they were asked about the self-publishing world, they both said, the challenge with the self-publishing world is that we've lowered the barrier to entry to such a level that anybody can get over the hurdle. It used to be that the big publishing houses determined what was good. And so if you got a book and it had a cover on it and it was nicely designed, you could trust that not only were the pages inside formatted properly, not only was the flow of information consistent, not only was it well laid out, well designed, and well packaged, but the content between the pages would be life-changing content. When that responsibility was removed by the lowering of the barrier to self-publishing so that anybody who wants to pay the price can now have their book in print, we have books out there that have hundreds of typos in them. We have books out there whose content is a regurgitation of somebody else's content. And because there's no gatekeeper to say, hang on, that's 80% plagiarism. There's nothing to stop the riffraff from publishing a book. And because of that, it becomes really hard to know the difference between a shoddy book with a great cover and a great book with a shoddy cover, or a great book with a great cover. It's nearly indistinguishable until you read through all of them. That's what lowering the barrier to entry has caused. Well, the same thing happened in the DJ industry in 2008, 2009. We were moving into our peak. I had been doing it for 5 years at that point, and 4 years at that point. We were starting to catch our stride. And then suddenly we would put out bids, and people come back and go, oh, yeah, I found someone to do it for $150. And you're like, whoa, my microphones cost more than that. I can't roll out there with $10,000 worth of equipment and spend 7 or 8 or 10 hours at your wedding for less than the cost of the gas and the crew that it takes me to get there. Who can do that? And the truth was, there were people who they'd buy a little sound system at the Cracker Jack box and show up with a Mr. Microphone and yell at your crowd. And they were dressed inappropriately. They didn't know how to handle a microphone. They didn't know what to do in front of a crowd. They didn't know how to manage the energy of the crowd. There was no barrier to entry. There was no, and there are membership organizations that if you're a part of them, the Wedding Guild or Wed Guild is a great organization. Peter Mary and Rod Baker have invested hours upon hours of time into that. There are great training programs out there if you want to be a professional MC and a DJ that will raise the bar of your performance level and your business. But the reason that we have DJs who do ignorant, embarrassing, humiliating things at people's weddings is because the barrier to entry is so low. On the speaking platform, there are some free events where you can speak, and there are some paid events where you can speak, but every year 50,000 people decide to do what I do. And as a result of that, the proof is in the pudding, in the impact that you make, in the quality of the programs that you produce, in the quality of your presentation on the stage. And there are professional organizations that are expensive to join and demand a lot of time commitment to be a part of. That those barriers to entry are still in place. And there are people who are hiring $10,000, $20,000, and $50,000 speakers who look at the quality of the presenter and the associations they belong to determine, is this riff-raff or is this the good stuff? The barrier to entry in so many things has been lowered because we have a sense of fairness in the world. I talked yesterday about the young man who asked the college students, what if I told you I was a woman? And they said, okay. And he said, what if I told you I was Chinese? And they said, okay. And he said, what if I told you I was 7? And they went, okay. He said, what if I told you I was 6'5"? And they went, yeah, but you're not. And it's amazing how far down the road to silliness you can get by simply making the claim. The gutter. The tough season between I have prepared and I have produced and I have readied myself up to this point, between there and the slingshot to success. That gutter is the barrier to entry. It's what keeps the riffraff out. It's what allows you to guarantee that if you're willing to stay through, to fight through the pressure that's coming from all sides, that what you produce in you, of yourself, the you that you become on the other side of this, will be worth fighting for. The reality is, unless the barrier to entry is lowered, whether you're talking about DJs, landscapers, wedding photographers, yes, I know wedding photographers are absolutely frustrated with the fact that anybody who can go to the pawn shop and buy a camera can claim to be a wedding photographer, because there's nothing other than their final results which demonstrates they're a professional or not. Anybody who can advertise can make that claim. That gutter is about proving the difference between those who bought a set of DJ speakers and a microphone as a second job, third job, fourth job, part-time job idea because they didn't want to go get a job, and they just barely made it over the speed bump that is the barrier to entry into that industry before they made a disaster on the other side. If there's something causing you right now to throw on the brakes, to slow down, to struggle, to fight, to get through, it's the barrier to entry. Appreciate it. Appreciate it for what it is. Because when you get past it, not if, but when you get past it and find yourself on the other side, that barrier to entry will weed out the riffraff. And you will find that you are on the other side among the elites. that you have made that crossover from your idea, from your dream. You have paid the price. You've done the things necessary. You will be living the dream. I'm not telling you that instantly the money's going to follow you. It's a comet tail. It's going to be a minute. It's going to be a minute. But when it does, life is going to change dramatically for you and everyone around you and everyone that you influence. But not if you quit while you're in the gutter. Not if you come against that barrier to entry and you turn around and walk away. Not if you give up on your dreams, your ideas, your goals, your destiny, because there's too much pressure. Now, I'm not telling you may not have to take a job. You may have to take a job too. You may have to take 2 or 3 jobs. But don't quit what you're called to just because of that. Don't let the challenges of this life stop you from doing what you were made to do. Jesus didn't. The disciples didn't. Thomas Edison didn't. Albert Einstein didn't. Tesla didn't. It's up to you. Will your name be recorded among the history books of the things that have been accomplished? Or will you be a 97%er who will live long enough to catch Social Security checks and retire with your feet up and no one knows what you've been here for? I can't answer that question for you. Only you can. And I can't pull you over the hump of the barrier to entry that's designed to keep out the riffraff. You'll have to decide if you want over that hump or if you are the riffraff. I'm J Loren Norris, and you've been watching Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.